This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 211, recorded on April 23rd, 2015. Here in Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a very beautiful, great run of weather here in Bellevue, Nebraska. And, of course, we post the show each week with world-class show notes out at the AverageGuy.tv. Today, you're going to want to pay attention to those show notes, by the way. If you have questions, comments, or contributions, you can contact the show. Send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Track me down on Twitter @jcollison, and now you can call in those questions. We've been doing this for a while, and I've been getting good messages. I'd like to get a few more from you. Call it in, 402-478-8450, and we'll play your question right here on the show. Of course, the AverageGuy.tv is powered by Maple Grove Partners, and, of course, that's web hosting. Great, secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people you know. That's Christian. He and the Johnson family, they are providing the bandwidth for us today. And for more information, visit maplegrovepartners.com. And we want to thank Roger. Although tonight we're not streaming on WLMN radio, we can't find Mike Uyghur, and he's my connection into the radio station. So we'll send the recorded version out there, though. So if you're watching, if you're listening, we want to thank Roger for streaming us after the fact. We play Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, I think we play over at WLMN Radio. You can find that at WLMNradio.com. And, of course, Home Gadget Geeks is a part of the Geeks Network. You can find the link to this show and many other great podcasts, and we're adding them all the time out at the Geeks Network, the Geeks Network, all one word.com. You can join us in chat, watch or listen live on YouTube, on Spreaker, on Mixlr, actually in a whole bunch of different places. You can do that all out at the AverageGuy.tv. All right. Well, I mentioned Mike is out tonight. We can't track him down, but we've got a replacement now. It's Paul scheduled the whole time. Paul Braren is coming in from Arizona. Paul, great to have you on the program. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Jim, for having me here. It's great to be here.
Why Arizona? What can we ask? Is it top secret? Can you tell us?
No. IBM has a large facility here, historically doing a lot of storage work in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm working on a Redbook. So IBM has these Redbook residencies where you live some somewhat exotic place for 3 to 5 weeks, and you write stuff. So that's why I'm here in Tucson, Jim.
Oh, cool.
This is my new home for the next 3 weeks.
Okay, so you're doing a three-week tour there in Tucson.
Exactly. So yeah.
You know, side note, my dad worked for IBM. Every time you're on, I think I mentioned that. And he worked out of the Santa Teresa plant in San Jose, and he almost got reassigned to Tucson when I was in junior high. So they had either just opened that facility or they were growing it or something like that, and they were talking about moving him down there. And I remember we had several nights that we would talk, weeks of nights, talking about, I don't know, maybe we'll move to Tucson. And I remember as a kid just being petrified that I would have to move away from the school to go to Tucson. So my life would have been completely different, I think, if I'd have moved to Tucson, Arizona. Beautiful, right? Hot, super hot already?
Absolutely. It was like 85 yesterday, 82 today, sunny, dry. It's different. This is only my 3rd time ever in the Southeast. I've been to Las Vegas a couple times right in the Strip, but that's not quite the same as here.
Yeah.
You got mountains, you got airplanes, boneyards for airplanes. It's kind of fascinating. And then, of course, everything in the desert that wants to kill you or poke your ankles or whatever. It's different. So this weekend I hope to do a bit of hiking and get to see some more. Most of my trip so far, I'm not usually here in a weekend, right?
Right. You'd mentioned the Grand Canyon, so you're going to try and get down there?
Maybe next weekend. We'll see. I'm here for 3 weeks, so this will be my first weekend. I still got one more to. It's a pretty long drive from Tucson.
Yeah.
5 hours plus, but
we'll see. You're not in Connecticut anymore.
No, complete opposite. And actually, the weather's rather beautiful at home, as you know, right? You got early spring greening up.
And so, did I hear you right? You're writing? Is that what you're there for?
That's correct.
And can you talk a little bit about that? What are you working on? Can you talk about it, or if you can't, that's fine too.
Yeah, no, I can. IBM works and partners with VMware on something called virtual volumes, or vVols. It's a way to dramatically speed up deploying virtual machines. So those of you listening are probably more typically on MSDN and using Hyper-V. Well, imagine you have a, 500 gig VM, so it's beefy, a lot of data to copy. Wouldn't it be cool if when you go to right-click and clone that thing, it takes seconds rather than 10, 15 minutes? So that's up my alley, Jim.
Yeah.
Speed, leading edge stuff barely just came out. vSphere 6 just came out. And now IBM needs to document some stuff, and that's what I'm happy to help
Yeah.
out with.
How much has your blog played into this? I mean,
Very little.
okay, so
Yeah,
not
keep them
okay.
separate, basically. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But how much of working on your blog has helped you get ready for something like this? You write a lot. I mean, TinkertryIT.com, right? Is your blog site?
Yes, it's helped a lot, Jim. So when you get beta code and it comes out only 5 weeks ago, you could say all the dry runs or rehearsals I was doing setting up my home lab before flying out here, they were exactly the skills I needed. I
Yeah.
needed to get it working in a hurry. So having a home lab and having gear that's efficient right under my nose that I can work on is key, so that when I arrive at a place like this with a large data center, I can hit the ground running and know the code from playing with the beta and then finally with the GA level code.
Yeah. But I guess, I mean, Paul, the physical, when you've over the last couple of years, you've really grown your blog. You write about it a lot. Has the writing of that helped in the writing of what you're doing now, or have you always been good at that?
No, hopefully it's helped. I knew it was kind of a weak spot. That's part of why I intentionally tackle something like writing, where, riddled with typos, spelling errors, grammar, but more important, trying to write something interesting that someone might want to read. That's what I've been trying to work on. And with a 20-year career, only the last 4 years have I really been diving into documentation and trying to engage people. And maybe I'm doing a better job than that, than listening to you and your question. I'm
No,
a little tired, but thank you.
that's okay.
You're
No,
so gracious about asking it again. So.
it's good. It's interesting. I think, I never wrote very much until I started doing a blog, and I just think everyone should have a blog, whether people read it or not. I just think in today's world, it's a great way to write, and we're losing that art. Ironically, as I've done more podcasting, I do less writing, and I should do more. I'll be honest. I enjoyed it when I did it. We do these show notes, but oftentimes they're really just links and some stuff. And I need to spend a little more time. My daughter's gift is writing, and I need to spend some more time with her and do some stuff along those lines and write some more. So I just think a blog is a great way to kind of express that. Your blog does very, very well. I mean, I think you're ranked very well. I think you have a lot of folks who follow you. Your documentation is great. You're very thorough. And so if you haven't tried out TinkertryIT.com yet, you should head out there. Paul, we've got a bunch of new listeners over the last 6 months, I think probably since I've had you on. They may not have been out to your site. So TinkertryIT.com, lots of great stuff, not just VM stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there that Paul covers. And so Paul's been a part of the community, I think, from the very beginning. And so you should try that out when you get out there. Real quick, Paul, before we go too far, I should remind folks, if they're thinking about it, we are in the throes of getting ready to do the Home Server Show, Surface Geeks, AverageGuy.tv meetup in Indianapolis. I know you've been out there before, and I've got a chance to meet you out there. We're doing that again here on September 11th and 12th out in Fishers, Indiana. That's just northeast of Indianapolis. Ironically, or coincidentally, I never use those words correctly, but it's on the exact opposite side of the city as the airport. So you fly in Indianapolis and you got to drive all the way around the city to get to it. But we have great fun out there, and right now Dave has blocked at that Holiday Inn in Fishers. If you just Google Holiday Inn Fishers, Indiana, he should be, I think by now, he should have a post out at Home Server Show about the meetup. But you might want to get ready. We've got an $89 room rate all set in for you guys. If you want to come out, the conference will cost $25. So hopefully by now there'll be some details. I'll put those in the show notes for this show, and we'll get ready to go. But it's coming up September 11th and 12th. If you haven't been out to one of our meetups before, they're great fun. We have a good time geeking out all day long. Paul, do you think you'll join us this year, or are you going to take it off?
I'm not sure yet. Last year, I ended up in Germany at the very same time, right? So it's hard to commit to something like that before. I don't travel that often, but nowadays when I'm traveling, it tends to be longer. So I would need to wait till much closer to the date before I could commit. But thanks for asking, Jim. It's a blast. I really missed going last year. The people driving from the airport, breakfast the next morning. It's all awesome. And
we have a good time. We have a good time doing it. It's always good to see. We get a lot of chance to talk, and yeah, I did interview you the last time we were in Germany. So if you go to theaverageguy.tv, just type in Paul Braren in the search, you can see the last time we did it. It was really late there. Did I do it earlier here? I think I did it from work, didn't I? So we could get you earlier.
You did. That was
Yeah.
extremely kind of you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good to do that, and so cool. And I had been to Germany the year before, so we were talking a little bit about some of those things. So you can catch up with Paul over there as well. Paul, they're asking in the chat room that you're set up in the hotel room. So let's talk a little bit about that. It takes a little bit of gear to make this thing happen. So what are you sporting to be able to podcast from the hotel room?
All right. Well, you mentioned Grand Canyon, so I was kind of thinking I might want to bring a tripod in this trip. And I hadn't squared away with Jim what mount to use for my new microphone, which hopefully my voice sounds better than any previous podcast. So we got the Audio-Technica AT2005 USB that Jim was just talking about last week. So Amazon Prime came in handy. Came the day before I flew here. Figured, how do I travel as light as possible? So you'll see I jury-rigged the mic to a camera tripod using, well, what do you do when you're in a hotel room with no tape? You use the USB cable.
Serious.
Wrap it around.
Nice.
You got a podcast. So.
Nice. I love it. Hey, whatever works, right?
As long as I don't sneeze or touch it, I think I'm good.
Yeah, and that's the mic stand that comes with the ATR devices. That's a ATR 2100, or that's an AT 2005 that you have there, and you just got that in between the tripod and then wrapped around. It's awesome.
Yeah, I squinched the legs together because otherwise it'd be hunched over a hotel desk trying to get close enough to the mic. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And you're on Wi-Fi at the moment?
Unfortunately, that's all the hotel. Actually, no. Sorry, I've got DSL-ish in this hotel, and I did bring a travel router. So for the computer, yeah, it's gigabit attached to a measly 1 megabit connection. So hopefully this, Google Hangout works out okay. Do I sound okay to you?
Yeah, no, the sound is great. Your video is off and on in sync with it,
okay.
And it just is. This is one of those things. If you're going to podcast regularly, you like to try and get on a wired connection whenever you can. But we do plenty of stuff where it's not possible. There's a little trick in Google Plus. When you're doing a Hangout on air, you can drop that down a couple notches. It'll keep your audio integrity in place, which is really important to us. Most of our listeners here listen on audio, and you guys listening, more than 95% of you are listening to the audio as opposed to the video. But so I like to get really good audio whenever I can. But so I'll sacrifice the video for good audio every time, in this case.
Okay.
And so good enough. Yeah, good enough. No, and it catches up to itself, and that's good. So you brought the microphone. You just bought that, packed it in the bag. Actually, that mic comes with a really nice bag that you can just. Right? You got a little bag with it that you put the mic in and stuff and carry it down?
Here you go. Sorry about the poor camera on this trip, but here's the leatherette bag. Audio-Technica logo there, but that's fine. Vinyl. We got a zipper here. And yes, everything fits in the bag. I would say not a good idea to leave the foam on when in the bag. Pull it off and flatten it somewhere. Otherwise, it gets kind of goofy shaped. And yeah, so Jim, a black arm, at some point, if you can give me a link for that, I'll go ahead and get it from your same affiliate link. And
yeah, we've been testing out a couple different kinds. It depends how much you want to pay. So Neewer, Neewer, Neewer's got a couple of arms. Now the spring is on the outside. I just purchased some of those for this conference I was podcasting at, and actually I couldn't get the arm on the table because the table was too thick. And the arms only, the bracket that goes in there was only so wide, and so I ended up not using them. But the springs on the outside don't travel as well. I think if you're going to travel with it often, I would go with the Rode.
Oh, yeah, no, I won't travel. It'll be at home on a standing desk that is a thin mount.
Then those newer ones are just fine, and they're $15. That you can take a step up, and they're $25.
So Neewer, can you spell that again?
Yeah, Neewer, I believe. I'll double check here while we're looking.
And while Jim's looking for that, I made a link for him. So bit.ly/Jim's mic. So if you end up wanting to look at the mic that I'm using here, bit.ly/Jim's mic, JIMSMIC, and that'll help him with his Amazon scholarship fund.
Yeah, if you look on Amazon, Neewer microphone suspension boom scissor armed stand. They're $15.95 right now, so that's a pretty good. You're going to get maybe a year or two out of that before you have to replace it. It's not meant to. And if you don't ever mess with it, if you don't use it that much, if you're not moving it around all the time, you might even get more time out of it. That's the one we bought for Christian and Ashton. I shipped to them, so they both have that arm as well. And those guys actually do travel with them. They take them home with them and stuff like that, and they've held up pretty well so far. So I think if you're just getting into this, Paul, we talked about this last week. I think having a mic, even at home now, super key for every conversation because it just sounds so much better than those little tiny condenser mics that are in your laptop.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jim, and hopefully the Google Hangout bandwidth is not making it worse than it could be, right?
No, it actually sounds pretty good.
Okay,
Yeah.
good to hear.
No,
all right,
you're
cool.
good. You are good. Okay. Well, so we covered a little bit of that, just kind of the mechanics, the hardware, making it work. Today, I'm pretty confident in hotel Wi-Fi. I mean, it has to be really, really bad in a lot of cases not to make this work. So there's some tricks you can do to make it work as well. Well, go
sorry,
ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say the Wi-Fi access point in the hotel rooms are often kind of like this. It's DSL. It's a unit on the wall that you have to dig behind furniture to get to, with broken Category 5 cables. So you bring your own, right, with a broken tabs. So I wired my router right into that and went with wired whenever possible, trying to avoid the Wi-Fi. So anyone who's traveled knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, do you have that 4G hotspot anymore?
Yeah. No. I mean, it's my phone. So an iPhone 6 Plus would be my LTE connection.
So it'd be a backup if you needed to do it that way too.
Correct. It's not getting full bars here, and it would be a backup. But once, before we went on the air, you said I sounded okay. I just left it there.
Yeah. No sweat. I think we're good. Let's talk a little bit about VM. That's really what I brought you on here to do. So, VMware just released new version 6. I know very little about it, and let's kind of keep this a fairly average guy. And although it's hard to talk VM and talk average guy, so maybe average tech guy from that standpoint. But talk a little bit about what that means. The last time I talked to you, we were talking 5.5. I think maybe even 5 the time before that. Maybe I have you on every time there's a new release. Maybe I think that's what happens is every time there's a new release I have you on. But talk a little bit about the latest of what's going on at VMware.
Sure. So February 2nd, VMware announced vSphere 6, and I was there in Moscone Center in San Francisco. And what was interesting about it is, well, it's been over 2 years since our last major release, and that's a pretty long time. For the enterprise, this is a big deal. So folks that work in IT typically will have MSDN. So if they're tinkering at home, it's probably more likely they're using Hyper-V. The thing is, if you're like me, where your customers generally are using VMware, which tends to be a bit pricey, you end up using VMware. So dogfooding, using what you're trying to train your customers on right in your own house to see it work or not work, warts and all. So that's how I learn, like many people. Trying it, kicking the tires, and I'm not trying to convince you to use VMware if you're already on Hyper-V. Not saying that at all. I'm more saying the two are roughly equivalent these days. They've gotten very similar, and you can squeeze an amazing amount out of your Core i7, even the one I bought 4 years ago in my house that I can't really justify replacing it, Jim. So for the enthusiast who has been for some reason running just one copy of Windows 8.1 or now Windows 10 betas on their Core i7 that has 16 or 32 gig of memory, well, that's cool, but imagine running another 10 operating systems on that same unit. Ubuntu, CentOS, Windows 2012 R2 Essentials, you name it. You can stick a lot on a single machine these days at well under 2,000, maybe even closer to 1,000. And Jim, maybe we can talk about hardware a little bit too. That affects Hyper-V and VMware.
Well,
but it's
because
exciting month.
That's the point, though. It's because there's certain hardware that's supported, right, from a VMware. You can't just take any PC off the shelf and throw it on there, or can you?
You can with a little bit of tweaking. So, for instance, obviously things like Intel branded network adapters. You have a gigabit adapter from Intel stuck in your Dell, HP, Supermicro, Lenovo server, whatever your server is. It's highly likely you stick VMware in there, it finds the network adapter, and it's happy. And it installs on a tiny USB key. It uses up very little memory. The install itself is almost trivial, not a big deal, and very tiny, light on its feet. Here's the kicker, though. For the newbies, they often get tripped up with a couple things. One, they don't have a compatible network adapter. So when you go to install it, it says something about, oh, I couldn't find a network adapter. And it looks like a showstopper. And it's a sad trombone moment where you might go away and not come back, right? So a lot of my articles tend to be about, well, if you take a moment on Google and search for Realtek, ESXi 6.0, you'll find articles from guys like me that say, here's what you do to fix that. You can inject a driver on the USB key, try it again, and now your consumer motherboard you probably have in your home that tends to have a Realtek cheaper NIC than Intel. What do you know? Now it works, or sort of works until you can spend 80 bucks on a little better adapter. So you're right, it's a more enterprise-focused product where they don't concern themselves so much with supporting every old MSI, Gigabyte, Asus motherboard. They're more concerned with name brands, Tyan, Supermicro, Dell, HP, Lenovo. But plenty of people have plenty of success with Mac Minis, Intel NUCs, and a rather new Xeon I want to tell you about too, Jim.
Well, let me ask you this question before you do that. With we talk about Intel NICs. I've seen some fairly inexpensive Intel NICs on Amazon or at Newegg. Is it the brand that matters? So can I pick up, if I find a deal on an Intel NIC, it's 35 bucks or whatever, and I pick that up, is that going to work the same way as those more expensive kind of enterprise grade network cards?
Might or might not. So how do you find out? If you Google or just type VMware compatibility list, pick Intel brand, and then read through the list of Intel network adapters. So it won't support all of them. Fair enough. It tends to be a little more towards 60, 80 bucks where you know it'll work. You go down towards 15, 20 bucks eBay from 4 years ago, you're probably going to be having to add a driver, which is, again, a little off-putting for someone who's new to it, where they see a showstopper when it can't find a network adapter on their very first boot.
So what would you recommend? So someone was getting into this and thinking about cost and simplicity, right? So, hey, I want to do this. I don't want it to necessarily be too hard. I don't want to pay too much. You're going to pay something, right? What's an ideal configuration, do you think, for the starter, for the average tech guy who wants to try? He's on Windows Server 2012 R2, so he's familiar with servers, those kinds of things. But hey, I want to try this VMware. What's kind of ideal? You need to be kind of generic there, but what would you think would be an ideal setup for that?
It's best to pick a system someone's blogged about in that exact model and type. So if you're thinking like Mac Mini appeals to you, and that ecosystem is something small, very few watts in your house, and you want a top blogger that can get you through it, there's virtuallyghetto.com, where he talks all about Mac Minis for years now. So you buy one of those, and the models he's talking about, your network adapter is going to work. You're going to get your keyboard synced for that first boot. All of it. It's been dealt with. I wouldn't recommend necessarily your very first try to go buy something that you're just not Googling and finding people talking about works with vSphere 6. That would not be maybe a great place to start if it's your very first attempt to get it working. My own site has super guides, and up there you'll see a variety of colorful white boxes that people built themselves that do work with VMware. I need to revisit that article now that vSphere 6 is out, and looking forward, it's more likely going to be some new, exciting low-end Xeons that are now arriving.
Drashta makes a comment in chat. He's like, well, if they got a Windows Server 2012, they could just use Hyper-V. Well, yeah, we
Absolutely.
get that. But that being said, we're trying to talk about VMware. But in this case, though, so Mac Mini, and then on the PC side, is there a favorite out there when you think about the hardware right now where guys are kind of jumping in on the PC side? That might be, an HP or a Lenovo or something along those lines. So it just works. We highlight a lot of times those microservers, right? We talk to the Gen 8. Are those good VM boxes?
Yes, there's plenty of forums talking about microservers. The Lenovo box you guys recently talked about, kind of a mini tower, very affordable. You search for that with VMware, you're also doing good. Excuse me, I'm in a dry desert and skipped dinner.
Do you need to grab water?
No, but at lunch I had this enormous thing, American style, just water, and that was 5 hours ago. Now I'm like,
yeah, if
starting
you
to shrivel again. It's incredible here. It's weird.
I bet. Yeah, it's just super dry.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you need to grab some water, let me know. From that standpoint, we can take a little break and get that done. So,
I'm good.
For me, what always happens to me is like every time there's a major release, a version release like this, I think, hey, maybe I'll use this opportunity to get into VMware, right? Maybe I'll spend this time getting it done, and so I fire it up, I try some things, I get a weekend project done, and then I go for a week or so, and then I'm like, okay, that's cool, and I shut it back down. But I know guys want to try this stuff from time to time. So, but you've given us two really good platforms to kind of start with from that standpoint. So, let me Paul, let me take a break for here just a second.
Oh, look who's
Let me,
here.
let me grill Mr. Mike Uyghur here for Mike. Welcome to Home Gadget Geeks.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Better late than never, I guess. Sorry about that. Had a
Yeah, are you okay?
crazy
We were worried
night.
about you.
No, yeah, we are all good on this side, but it's just been a crazy week. Final start Monday, so I'll just say that. That's been
Okay.
the
All right.
I apologize, but yeah, better late
No.
than never. So
Yeah, no sweat, no sweat. What's going to happen with WLMN radio? Are they are we just going to miss the slot, or how's
I
that?
think we're gonna miss the live side, but we'll
Yeah.
still be able to go in on the other side.
Yeah,
so
I'll upload the.
my apologies.
No,
but,
not a big deal, Mike. I don't think you've met Paul Braren before, so Mike meet Paul and Paul meet Mike.
I have not. Nice to meet you, Paul.
Likewise, and it's cool to hear I might actually make it to airwaves too. It's kind of old school, but fun to hear that a radio
Yes.
tower will be
We
broadcasting.
definitely will make it there. So
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny we've come full circle where we're doing these podcasts and they're available live streaming through YouTube. Oh, and by the way, you can get it on radio too, which is just hilarious. Mike, have you ever heard anybody from Grafton like email in that they listen to you? Have you gotten anything like that?
I had someone email me about open mic night, but not about this show. So still waiting for our first one. So if you're out there from Grafton, let us know.
Yeah, send us an email. Send me an email, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. We'd love to hear that Grafton, West Virginia is listening to us. And I think we play, and I checked, I think it's 11 to noon or 10 to 11 Eastern time, Monday through Friday. That's kind of
that's about right.
And I think open mic night is on earlier in the morning. I think you're an afternoon guy last time I checked.
Yeah, I think I'm in the afternoon on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He might have switched that to every day of the week, but it started out being in the afternoon.
That way you don't have to wake up early, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
exactly.
Good enough. You're on the evening drive. Well, Mike, welcome, and I'm glad you can make it. I was really worried. I'm like, man, he never misses anything.
No, I don't. So there was a rare circumstance. So
yeah, I bet there was. All right. So, Paul, we were digging in a little bit on kind of basic hardware to get things going. You had mentioned some, talking about some of the new processors that are out. So let's dig in a little bit. What kind of news do you have for us on that?
All right. So another blogger, Patrick Kennedy, servethehome.com. That site had pretty exciting news in early March, along with many other sites, where Supermicro and others were ready day and date of Intel's big Xeon Processor D1500 announcement. Why is a Xeon a big deal to announce? Well, think of it like, how the atom is very small on the motherboards and system on a chip, SoC? Well, they're doing that with Xeon. Why would you care? Well, here's the thing. For 4 years, you heard my virtualization server that I affectionately call Vzilla has 32 gig of RAM. That was about $200 4 years ago. And it's a Core i7. Upgrading it to anything new today, generally you're still stuck with 4 DIMM slots and only 32 gig of memory support. And that's your first bottleneck with virtualization. So here comes Intel with a surprise announcement that you go up to 128 gig on a 6.7 inch by 6.7 inch motherboard with the CPU pre-installed. Holy smokes, for $800-ish. And there's more to it. It's got an M.2 slot, so you get screaming fast SSD, not measly old SATA 3, but much faster. You got a PCI slot, and you got 2 10 gig interfaces and 2 1 gig interfaces. It's a virtualization lover's dream. Lopta U2 on Hyper-V. Forget VMware Hyper-V debates. It's whatever you use at work, right? This is me trying to learn what my customers, they're using VMware. They might be starting to dabble in Hyper-V, and I can play with that too all in one box. Hyper-V nests under VMware. You can run both on one box. That starts at about $850 bare bones. You got your CPU, you got your tiny little motherboard, you got 4 fast Ethernet interfaces. Now you need to stick some memory in there. And so far it's looking like to get to 64 gig, it'll take you another $700 or $800. We'll have to see how the prices look when it really starts shipping. But Jim, that's exciting. For under $2,000, a machine with that kind of horsepower and potential, it's just awesome. That's
Yeah,
what I've been waiting for.
It has 5 network ports on it, so you've got 2 duals and then a fifth that's for
management. So
yeah,
let's perfect segue. The one dirty little secret, but people sometimes learn the hard way with VMware, you install it and then you walk away. It's meant to be data center management kind of thing. So the local VGA, the local video coming out of your virtualization server, if you're using VMware's ESXi product, it's called, the hypervisor. You install it, but you ain't running Windows 10 on the local GUI. You have this texty-looking, DOS-looking GUI where you configure the network, and once the network's configured, you walk away. So when Jim just referred to a 5th Ethernet port that's on the motherboard, it's integrated management module. That lets you just point the browser in your home to the IP address of your server that's left in a basement, say, and from when you turn it on through the web browser, all the way through, you watch the BIOS come up and you configure it, boot your USB device, install VMware to it. You're good to go. You don't need a physical, old-fashioned keyboard, video, or mouse connector to that server. All you need is gigabit and power. Also another reason this looks really appealing at that price point, Jim. So suddenly, for the first time, Xeon is not feeling like I have to spend twice as much in ECC memory and all that stuff. This product brings it way down in cost, being much more appealing than a Core i7 to me at this point for virtualization.
What would 128 gig of RAM cost you today?
Don't know yet. Sorry. The only parts I could find that reasonably looked like I could sort of estimate the price were 64 gig total in a kit, and it looks like 800-ish on the street for DIMMs that'll fit this motherboard. And they didn't go with memory DIMMs that fit on a Mac Mini or laptop. Those are smaller and tend to be more pricey. They went with commodity longer ones. So when you look at the picture, it's almost goofy.
It does look big.
Yeah, those are huge. And those aren't PCI slots. Those are DIMM slots, right?
It takes like a quarter of the board.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not so much about that. It's mostly about efficiency. If you're going to leave this running, something that burns only 25 to 40 watts, that has all this power, and 4 Ethernet NICs at that low price point, you know, if you put a PCI card in there for gigabyte, you're burning with some watts. This jams it all on the motherboard. It's really efficient.
And what kind of case would you what case would you prefer for this size?
I would love to get my hands on Supermicro's bundled case. So they actually will ship this motherboard bundled in their own branded case. But if you scroll down on tinkertry.com/intel-xeon-d-announced, a little long, but I'll put that in the show notes, and it's in the chat for live listeners. If you scroll to the bottom of that article, Jim, you got the chat wing in front of your eyeballs there?
No, I'm looking at it.
Scroll all the way down, and you'll see some some case ideas. And there's one from Cooler Master, for instance. And
the Cooler Master Elite 120.
Exactly.
It's an advanced mini ITX board or case. I have a case very similar to that. That's actually what I'm running. I've got an Atom 525 that's running pfSense. They couldn't be farther apart from power and boards, and I have a little SSD in there, and that thing runs at maybe 10 watts.
Yeah, and this case is only $43. Yes, the CPU will start at 20. Low 25 watts if you go with no 10 gig interfaces. You just go with 2 gigabit interfaces, which is obviously fine for most people. But people that are trying to get VMware certified, that might build a cluster. So the prospects of tying 2 of these together with SSDs inside each and putting a 10 gig cable between them without a switch, that's pretty fantastic. You get ridiculous speeds moving VMs between the 2 servers while they're running. All sorts of exciting potential for a box like this. Still, for even getting 2 of them with starter levels of memory, you're still under $3,000 or something. So it really will change things. It's just starting to ship now, so we'll have to see how the coming months go.
And give it some time. Price will come down maybe a little bit.
Exactly.
What about drives? What when you stack something like that with drives, how are you gonna? I see 5 or 6 SATA ports on there. How are you gonna stack them in there?
Yeah, so if you scroll a little further down the same article, below the Cooler Master, you'll see Supermicro's offering. So they jammed 4 3.5-inch drive bays, and you could stick some 2.5-inch below it. I think 2 of them, and then finally M.2. Jim, I'm like almost done with M-SATA. So my laptop I'm broadcasting with, it's a W520 from 3 years ago. Under the keyboard, it's got a M-SATA port. I jammed a 1 terabyte Samsung 840 EVO in there. Sounds cool, but guess what? It's SATA 2, not even SATA 3 on this older laptop. Fine, even if I had the new 540, you still have M-SATA, and you're still limited on speed to the maximum of 540 megabytes per second. You've all seen that on benchmarks. We've been stuck there for years. You go to M.2, a new form factor, and it can blow right past that. So looking forward, if I were to spend money, it'd probably be on a giant 6 terabyte, 1, maybe 2 max, and then put the rest of my money in the biggest SSD I could afford in the M.2 format, so I get the full speed out of it.
Right.
Meaning, well, you know what it means, cloning VMs, working with them, booting them.
Yeah.
They can be fast, and you take, Jim, you've heard Dave McCabe, he RAID zeros occasionally, and lots of other people do too, to SATA 3 devices, two traditional laptop-looking, OCZ Vertex or something. You get double the speed for reads and writes, right? Here you've got a motherboard without RAID complexity. You just get a tiny chip, snap it into the motherboard, and you now can have up to 4,000 megabytes per second if you want. And if you click on TinkertryIT.com, the page that I published last night is NVMe. There's your new acronym for the night. That's what replaces SATA, that old interface for hard drives. Who needs that? When you're looking at flash storage, maybe 2 years from now, you're not talking about SATA and 2.5-inch little boxy laptop-looking drives. You're buying tiny little chips you snap on your motherboard at way faster speeds.
And what's that again?
NVMe.
Okay.
If you go inside, Samsung will define the acronym for you. And I'm digging that up now.
I'm surprised it's not embedded in a Mac laptop somewhere.
You know what? It might be. We just don't know yet.
Well, you've heard MacBook Pros, they already exceed SATA speeds. So they're doing their own thing in the motherboard that uses PCI Express for the interface. So yes, we're already blowing past the old, large, boxy-looking 2.5-inch drives from the old laptop standard, which are almost getting silly when all that's inside there is a whole lot of air. And I've been running a 1 terabyte SSD for 10 months already. It's tiny, the size of two quarters end to end. That's about the size of an M SATA. M.2 is very similar, although they can go kind of long. They can get up to about 3.5 inches, I believe, when you get a full, say, terabyte. But 2 years from now, it could end up the size of a quarter for a terabyte. We'll see.
That's just ridiculous. When you look at this, Paul, how long? So we've got some new things coming on a board like this. How long before these are mainstream? Do you think?
They're starting to ship. So like last week, Samsung started kind of leaking information and then finally published an article. I'll put it in the show notes. So non-volatile memory express is the acronym, NVMe, and the express hinting at PCI Express is the interface. It's not SATA. It's not that little SATA connector you're used to. It's something else. It looks a lot more like a memory DIMM slot.
Yeah, and it's faster because it's directly to the bus.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to go through anything to get there. It goes right to the hose.
Yes, and there's less overhead. It doesn't have to do SATA like SCSI command stuff. It's a new spec, and it removes a lot of the latency and overhead. Kind of like let's think about USB 2. Moved to USB 3. Now they move into USB 3.1, and there's various things there to speed up the protocol as well in USB 3.1, where hard drives on USB 3.1 have gotten pretty good too. So finally, our hard drives are, needing faster interfaces, and it's happening.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great time. I mean, we're making another. I think we're making another leap, is what we're doing at this point, where there's a lot of cool stuff coming that has finally made its way in almost ready for the mainstream, and it's coming in. I think by the end of the year, a lot of these things will be mainstream, and what we're talking about. I mean, I think today we still have most people buying SATA hard drives and those kinds of things because that's just the consumer grade hardware that's in the $100 to $200 price range. Most people, that's the tolerance for the average guy. The tolerance for a motherboard purchase is going to be in that $100 to maybe $250, we'll say, price range. They want to get that box somewhere around $1,000. And so there's still that sweet spot are still in those drives. I mean, we're seeing spinning hard drives getting just ridiculously cheap. The SSDs have completely, the bottom has fallen out from a pricing standpoint on those, and they are just ridiculously cheap at this point. But this is the next generation. Am I safe to say that this is really the next gen?
I hope so. I mean, the tablet makers and Apple, they seem to do kind of funky things and starting to seal their designs. So the innards will be tied to PCI Express. Whether they'll actually be using the M.2 form factor at the end of that long chip, I don't know. We'll have to see if Apple does that. But for Intel-based systems, it sure looks like that's the way they're headed. These Intel Xeon D1500 systems I'm talking about, systems on a chip, a motherboard combined with CPU, all as one package. You buy the two together on Amazon for roughly 800 something. That is the way we've been told we were headed 2 years ago, right? You're not going to be using thermal paste and putting your own CPU in.
Right.
That may disappoint you, but you know what? If you still have 4 DIMM slots, you have 4 gigabit and 2 gigabit and 2 10 gig. Do you really need a much more? If they've welded that all in the motherboard and saved you watt burn, you kind of stop complaining about the lack of thermal paste. So I think I'm ready to move on, and I really didn't want to invest like late last year where I'd get maybe 20% speed boost over my 4-year-old system, and I still couldn't get past 32 gig of RAM. I saw no reason to go blowing $2,000 at that point.
Yeah,
I've been waiting. I've been waiting for this.
I remember you talking about this and just kind of saying, there's no advantage to upgrading right now.
Yeah, and so Hyper-V, VMware, whatever you play with, keep in mind, whatever you put your storage on, like Jim said today, it's probably a 2.5-inch terabyte is the most affordable. You know, under 400, you're getting yourself a terabyte. Under, well, what is it, low 200s, half a terabyte. You can do amazing things with price, watching for sales. You put your VMs on there today, but at least this motherboard a year from now, let's hope M2 prices drop, you could just vMotion those VMs that you're already running day and night and move them while they're running. And all of a sudden, they'll be 2 to 4 times faster. It's cool. That's the cool thing about having a home virtualization lab. You can do data center-like things right in your home lab, and you kind of get hooked on it once you see how ridiculously efficient it is to run 10 VMs in your home lab on one low watt burn machine. You're one person generally, so it's not like they're taxing the CPU. When you go to sleep at night, they're barely doing anything. You might just have home automation or something like that running in the background. When you go to use it, it's there for you instantly, all at a very low watt price point. That's what's very appealing to this versus buying a bunch of high-end servers from a data center that you might take as a hand-me-down that burn 400, 800, 600 watts.
I had one of those. I had one.
So in Connecticut, that'd be about $1,200 in electricity that I can't expense to anybody a year. So if I look at 4 years of running Zilla, imagine if I was burning through $1,200 a year just to the electric company. That would make me sick. So I knew I had to be efficient when I started 4 years ago in my home lab. And here we are. It'll be much more efficient this time. I'll probably half the efficiency and double the RAM on my next upgrade. So not bad.
Mike, you look like you have a question.
Well, kind of my question, my focus tonight was kind of taken after, Christian used to be the co-host on this show, so I feel like I got to fill his gap somehow. But was wondering with these VMs, where is their place in the education? So when you're looking at the institutions, the universities, teaching students how to do different things, is there a place for these type of VMs in that sphere or not? We talk about them in the homes like you're talking about now, but in the education sphere, where are we at with those?
Absolutely. So instead of having to have a rack closet, something this tiny in a school is much more practical to situate near maybe a battery, and then you have a classroom next door with 16 connected PCs running their own copies of Windows one week and Ubuntu the next. Absolutely, for a really low cost and price point. So you don't have to go with a 1U pizza box, rack mount 19-inch gadget. You could do something like this. Way simpler, way less metal, way less landfill when it's all done in 3 or 4 years. I just find this very appealing. So they're really talking about colo and data centers, or that's who they're targeted to. But the home enthusiast who happens to do IT for a living in their day job, extremely appealing. People that run in schools as well, they're doing IT at work. I think this might be pretty appealing too. If they just need 1 or 2. If they need 10, okay, they're going to do rack mount pizza boxes on rails where they can pull them out in service. But you're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for the rack, and you're going to pay the enterprise-y prices for that.
Okay.
Paul, how's licensing working now with VMware? So if I'm the average guy, average tech guy, and I'm like, oh, cool, I'm going to go buy this. Maybe the price can come down a little bit, and I'm going to buy it. What do I do about, as the average guy? The enterprise does something different, but what do I do about licensing with VMware as far as the server components go?
Yeah, good news there. About 8 months ago, they came out with Eval Experience. So I wrote a title when I published it. I wrote VMTN, VMware Technology Network. It was kind of like TechNet for Microsoft people, right? VMTN reincarnated. Eval Experience is to VMware professionals what MSDN or TechNet is to Microsoft professionals. So yes, it costs money, and it's $200 a year. But you now don't have a license key that's expiring in 60 days, and you have access to the high-end products you want to teach yourself in your home lab for a year. So you have enough seriousness about virtualization that you might be headed towards certification, which costs money, and you're buying some hardware, which costs money, or you're trying to learn in the cloud and borrow one of VMware's online learning labs. If you're a person who can deal with the cloud and don't really care about hardware or what burn in your basement, fine. Try to do it online somewhere. But if you actually want something that you like having your hands on and you want to install VMware yourself and learn it really well, including how to build your own data center in about an hour, which is what my upcoming video will be showing you, then you might go this route. Invest the $200 and not worry about rebuilding every 60 days, get around license restrictions that VMware's plagued us with for years.
So today, that's the limitation. If I get anything, I'm going to get a 60-day trial.
Correct.
What if I did want to buy a server license? Is it more than $200?
Yeah, they're under 1,000. I think it's
Okay.
580 or something for their beginner level, you know.
So it's just cheaper to buy the $200. I mean, it's just cheaper to go $200 a year, right? I mean, at that point, that's the cheapest price point.
Correct. So tinkertry.com/eval experience. I've put it in the chat. We'll put it in the show notes. What it's got is big red circle. This is the company that's offering this, saying, for those of us who are interested in the home lab using VMware products, this is exactly what we need to get started. So they are very much in there. I'm very much in their crosshairs, right? Guy like me who wants to affordably have a reasonable cost license key that I can horse around with. It has really nothing to do with my day job. I'm not borrowing a license key from my day job. I'm just investing a bit in myself to keep certified. And just like you would with MSDN if you're learning Hyper-V.
Yeah, that seems. I mean, I think again, you say this very, very well. If you're going to do this for your job, if you're going to be professional about it, it's a great opportunity. If you're just going to tinker, right? If you're like me, and I'm probably not going to get a VMware certification, I'm probably better off doing the 60-day license, unless I think I'm going to be running this full time. Would that be right?
Sure, or you take your Windows 10 in a couple months. Was it late July we just heard from Mary Jo Foley yesterday, right?
Well, that's what they say.
We'll Yep. So you put Hyper-V on that, and you tinker with 1 or 2 VMs. Or you put VirtualBox in there, a friendly UI I know you've played with before.
Mm-hmm.
Or VMware Player. Those products you get going very quickly and simply, but you're only going to be juggling, 1 or 2 VMs on an 8 gig laptop. The stuff I've been focusing on was, more towards 32 gig of RAM, which is affordable these days, where you can juggle 10 VMs. So if you're trying to teach yourself CentOS and a firewall, and you guys have mentioned many of these, OpenNAS, you're trying to learn a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I mean, you can juggle a lot on a little higher end machine and the hypervisors from Hyper-V from Microsoft and ESXi from VMware are going to get you a whole lot more bang for your buck out of your hardware investment with a little steeper learning curve. I'm not pretending otherwise. And that's where the videos come in. They walk you through soup to nuts, beginning to end, from turning on the machine to building the USB key to installing VMware to putting your first VM on there to all of it. That's what my upcoming vSphere 6 video is working on. And I've got the raw data. I finished it hours before my flight. Now I got to compile it, edit it, and I'm so eager to get it out. I've got a monitor on its way to me because I can't stand working on a laptop. I got 3 machines at home, 3 monitors at home to edit video, and there's nothing like having 1920 by 1080p in your preview window running all the time, and you just can't do that on a measly laptop with so yeah, hopefully soon, within a week or 2, I'll get that video out. My last one was very popular for 5.5, and I'm happy about that. It helps people get over those stupid little speed bumps where they might go away for licensing reasons, or they can't find the download site, or they can't find a network driver. I try to get them past those bumps.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's the recommendation out of here is if you're thinking about doing this, and I think, I think it's worth a try if you got some hardware that you want to do it. I mean, I think like I said, I do it about every 6 months. I walk myself through it. I get it installed. I put one VM up. I'm like, okay, good. I got it done. I've been through it before, and then I kind of let it go. I've been spending so much time on 2012 that I've kind of been focusing on that over the last year as opposed to keep trying on VMware. But I'm always enticed by it, Paul. We have these discussions, and then I'm like, maybe I should try it again, just from that standpoint. I actually have a 2012 box that keeps rebooting about every hour. It just reboots, and I had just moved a bunch of data to it, and because it was going to be the next kind of my next server here, then my next home server. But you can't have your home server rebooting every hour, so I needed to move the data back off of it. It wasn't rebooting when I moved the data to it. But I was hearing it, I was hearing that, the drives spin back up again. I'm like, what is that sound? And I noticed I was logging in through TeamViewer, and it kept dropping the TeamViewer connection, of course, and then I'm like, oh, this thing's rebooting. So
Jim?
I'm going to have to tear it apart.
So I got into the weeds in this, but I heard your story, and let me, thinking aloud here, vSphere 6, what's a unique feature? All you need is Ethernet attachment between the machines. So it used to be you needed like a Drobo, which we know you played with quite a bit in Synology, right? A little pricey, those options. And both your VM needed to live on that. It needed to be on shared storage. So if you had two machines in your house running VMware, to move from one to the other seamlessly, the storage, it actually kind of lived in the same place. vSphere 6, it all goes away. If you have an internal SSD on one machine and you want to move it to a spinny 6 terabyte drive on another machine, no problem. So they made things easier and more versatile in a home lab. And frankly, Microsoft Hyper-V is doing a lot of that too.
Yeah.
But, yep.
Yeah. Any other in 6? Any other major improvements that would warrant a quick discussion?
USB 3 support. So that's a big one. So you got a USB 3 port in your motherboard. You can actually use it and pin it to your VMs now. So attach yourself an external cheap USB 3 hard drive to a, I don't know, Windows Server 2012 R2 Essentials box for backups. Boom, you solved your problem and you're getting decent speeds. So there you go.
How about GPU pass-through?
Yes, people do play with that. It gets more into the weeds. If you look on my homepage, there's an article about GPU. People try to do Hydra multi-headed gamers, packing an Xbox and all that into one machine. That's not your beginner project, I would say.
No, just wondering though. That's people ask those questions,
and you also.
Oh, keep going.
No, I was going to finish with that word pass-through. It's a key word, right? So we hinted at pass-through of a USB 3 device. You're basically attaching it to a VM, and now Windows sees that device. Whether it could be a 5 terabyte hard drive, right? Or pass-through of a GPU card, and then finally pass-through of a network adapter. Why would you do that? Well, Cox lets me attach multiple Ethernet interfaces to my one cable modem. So when I'm on the road, I have an open VPN appliance, and it's just passed through to one of my open VPN VMs that OpenVPN created for me. It's basically, think of it as an app for my ESXi hypervisor. I just point to a big file. It's largely configured. Within 2 minutes, I point to the IP address with my browser, and I say, hey, here's my internet interface, and I now configure my phone and my computer to use that when I'm on the road. So I merge in the internet as if I'm sitting at home in Connecticut even when I'm on the road, fully encrypted. That's one of those projects, and I've talked about that on my site and at local user groups. A lot of fun. So that's also a pass-through project.
Yeah, I think if you're listening to this, I think the key is Paul's got this all documented at TinkertryIT.com. So if you have some questions around it, hit stop here, come back to it, and then pop over there, TinkertryIT.com. He's got tons of stuff. You can, if you've ever been thinking about doing this. Again, we've got a bunch of new listeners who have not maybe even heard this before. We spent a bunch of time last night on Home Server Show at homeservershow.com, again, for our new listeners coming in, talking about Azure. And we had a Microsoft, Dwayne from Microsoft came in and is fully qualified in Azure. Of course, Azure is Microsoft's cloud, and they've got some great VM capabilities in the cloud. Where is VMware in that space? What are they offering, or are they trying to compete in that cloud space?
I have not researched that lately or seen any big announcements on their cloud offering that would target, say IBM or Dell or HP's customers, right? Looking to put their stuff in the cloud where Amazon obviously has been advertising that for a long time, and I know you've played with it, and Azure with Microsoft a long time. So. Yeah, you kind of caught me off guard. I'm a physical guy, all right? I'm a hands-on guy who's installing servers, putting VMware on there. And most of my customers are on-premise because they want a judge to serve them a subpoena for a search warrant on their physical premise. They don't want to share their storage or their virtualization with others. That's the reality still. It's going to take a while to get to cloud with those customers. But when you have banks and hospitals and such, with being the laws the way they are, they don't really feel comfortable with a cloud that could live in any country where the machine could end up being taken down or their data being taken away. It's not. I know that's where the world's headed. I'm not, head in the sand.
Right.
But my own day job reality, it's still very much physical and putting.
Just wondering because virtualization, especially desktop virtualization, is getting really good on Azure. It's one of those kinds of things where I've been testing a lot of stuff. Paul, we went from too much light to not enough light in there. Do you have a way of turning the light on?
This is a hotel with extremely efficient lamps in a desert. So they give me one lamp next to me and a ceiling lamp that's doing me no good. So
That's actually good enough right there.
all
Yeah.
right, I'm trying to get this thing tilted
It's just
with a
funny how
screwdriver.
dark it got. This is the dilemma of podcasting at night. When you're using natural light. Whenever we used to bring Jay Moore in from he's in that area too, or was at this. I think he's still out there in Arizona. And we'd always catch him at this time, and it would start light, and then it would just get darker and darker. And pretty soon he was sitting in the dark.
So Mike, if we meet again someday, I'll have a real camera and a better mic stand when I get back home, and some lighting. So
I think you look great. So
he's a fellow podcaster. He knows the deal.
it gets tough sometimes. So I totally understand. But hey, nice microphone, by the way. I saw that in the show notes. I was excited to see that.
Yeah, Jim finally convinced me he's good at that, and it was only $55. He's right. I should have done it a long time ago. So hopefully, when I hear myself in playback, I'll feel like it was.
Oh, it sounds great, Paul. I'm not going to lie. It sounds great. Yeah, you actually sound really good. And I just think it's a standard. It needs to be a standard thing. If you're doing any kind of conference call, even at work, I'll go up to the studio. If I'm going to do a bunch of calls, I'll just go up in the studio to put earbuds in and get a microphone. And it's just so much better to. It's easier on your voice too. You don't talk as loud. When you hear your voice coming back, you don't talk as loud. You scream into conference phones. You talk louder when you get done. Your throat's kind of sore. And when you're on a microphone, you just don't feel like you have to talk as loud. So pretty cool. Well, anything else as we kind of bring this, Mike Uyghur? Let me throw that over to you. You got any more questions you want to throw at Paul on this? I know you kind of came halfway through, and you don't have to have any, but any questions for Paul?
Well, I have far too many questions. That's my problem, because this is something I definitely want to start playing with. But now that I'm looking at the website here, I'm just going to have a blast with this. I think this summer I might spin one of these up, get it going, and really play with it, because it's an area that I've never dealt with, but one that I've always wanted to dive into. So I'm very excited. You provide some great resources. So,
Mike, were you here when he said a Mac Mini is a great place to start?
I was not.
Okay.
But I would agree. Mac Minis are a fantastic way.
Yeah.
On the Mac side, that's where I work. That's where I live. I would definitely suggest a Mac Mini, and they are fun to work with. And I wish the design of them was a little bit better for mounting, but that's the only complaint I have. But yeah.
Yeah, they're headed towards, soldered-on DIMMs, right? So you'd be probably talking about an eBay used Mac Mini from a year or two would be a good place to start, is what I really meant. So thank you for bringing that up. Because if you buy new, now you're stuck with the memory you bought it with, and maybe not the first choice. But if you've already been inside of a Mac Mini and you're familiar with working on the laptop, it feels very much like working on the laptop in there, right? Kind of small.
Right.
Then yeah, it is a good starting spot, especially if you have one in your house already. My point there was it's already documented by a guy, Virtually Ghetto. And Jim, Chatwing, there's great stuff. Drashin is saying really good feedback. Maybe we just steal the show notes right from the Chatwing, because it's good. It's good tonight.
Yeah, there's some good. It's been a great conversation. If you've been a listener, we're a gadget show, but from time to time we go deep, and so it's just good to have this conversation. Typically, the guys that come out live, we've got a few system admins out there who keep up when I struggle a little bit, Paul, I'll be honest with you, but these guys are keeping up for sure out there in the chat room.
That's one thing on. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Mike.
Well, on the Mac side, like you said with the Mac Mini, they're making it harder and harder to at least access all the hardware on these computers. I know I just replaced the hard drive to put an SSD in my iMac, and that involves cutting the glue, popping off the screen, and getting in there. So that's one thing that makes, on the Apple side, them a little bit hard to work with in this area, is because, like you said, with the new Mac Minis, with all of the new products, even the new laptops and stuff like that, stuff being soldered on, and even just access to that hardware is extremely difficult. So.
Yeah, I mean, to drive that point home, I got laptops and spare parts, old ones. So right before the flight, one of my standby laptops from 6 years ago that I put VMware on when I'm in a hotel room, its keyboard was failing. I noticed the key was sticking. This was like 12 hours before my flight. Okay, I just took out another laptop with the same keyboard, got a screwdriver out, and I had it fixed in 5 minutes, right? Those days are going away.
Right.
I'm well aware of that because I've played with the Surface Pro 3, which was a glorious machine. And wonderful. It's like looking at the future with the UEFI BIOS and the touchscreen. But all that serviceability and ability to swap out a hard drive when it dies, it's going away. It's all the more reason backup is continuing to be extremely important to me. Full bare metal backup and restore.
Right. I replaced my hard drive on my 2009 MacBook, which was a breeze. Pop off the battery container and just swap out the hard drive. So I went to my 2012 iMac. I'm like, well, it better be just as easy because it's a 3-year newer machine, and not the case.
Other than that, you're pretty darn happy with the machine, I bet, with that, right?
Very happy, extremely happy. Oh, yeah.
Yep. So they're compromises. Yep.
Yeah.
Lopta says in chat, I may buy a Mac Mini for my wife. The fact that it could run VMware is in no way influencing my choice there.
Oh, she'll be thrilled when you put that on there. She can type in a new IP address. It's not a good interface.
Just hide it
locally.
from her, right? Just
Yeah,
just put VMware on there and then run Windows or whatever, right?
yeah,
On top of
remotely,
it.
remote desktop to it.
Yeah, and
She'll never know.
When my
no, and
laptops
then,
break, that's what I do. So I set my wife up with another laptop. She's remotely controlling a virtual version of her broken laptop while it's getting serviced. Laptop comes back, shove the hard drive back in, pick up right where you left off.
that's awesome.
Personal cloud. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so good. You listen. If your family has to love you because you are so good to them. Every time we talk to you, you've got every scenario covered. There is no way anybody's losing data or time or productivity. You can back them up in a matter of seconds, get them back up and running on something else that's like it never missed. Then you service it, gives you some time, and then you fix it, and then you give it back to them. You got to be a hero, right, Paul? I mean, you got to be a hero in your family.
Except for when I'm in the desert and the lawn needs mowing and I'm 2,000 miles from home, or not always a hero.
I know my lawn needs mowing bad.
Or when things break, it can be a little tough, and kids are in college now. It gets more and more challenging. But yeah, VPNs, backup, it's all even more important as the machines are more and more distant from me.
No, you do a great job of that. You have way more discipline than I do, and I'm always jealous when I talk to you because you do such a good job of setting all that stuff up. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had more time or more discipline or just smarter. You're like, wow, that's some really great stuff. So Mike, as you get to know Paul and you dig into this, if you ever want to know anything about this stuff, he's the guy to ask. I'm not lying.
Well, I'm going to go to you because I've still got my wife's 2011 MacBook Air sitting right under this desk. It's been unusable for about a few months, so if I had been able to do what you did, she would have been a lot happier with me. So it could have been a great way to impress her in this new marriage I'm going
through. It gets expensive, man. So be right. Although Paul does it reasonable. That's what I like about it.
That's why I'm starting to get the gist of, so that's why I kind of like it.
Yeah, no, super reasonable.
Very excited
to
do it.
When the power went out in the thunderstorm the day after I arrived here, yeah, my phone tells me the data center at home shutting down. Disappointing, right? But I did it for under 200 with a battery that is a USB attached ESXi, shut down all the VMs gracefully. I knew everything was going to be fine when the power was restored. And I politely asked someone to hit the power switch to resume it, right? That's fine. It's under 200, not a enterprise APC UPS that costs 500 and is rack mounted. So yeah, I'm always trying to do things affordably for, very selfish reasons, of course. But
yeah, you do a great job.
Thank you.
Paul, let's real quick. We got just a few minutes because you got a hard stop, don't you? Do you need to go?
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, you do. Real quick, any gadgets that you're liking at the moment? Any new gadgets in the Braren bag of tricks?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna fire up the camera's LED to give us a little more light and just show you something real quickly. This will take just a minute.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if we got a little more light here. Yes, we do. You can see the back of a hard drive enclosure now. You can see a tiny fan. What's interesting about this? UASP. It's a USB 3 hard drive enclosure, big whoop, but there's a couple interesting things. One, it's toolless. Comes in handy in a hotel room. All I need to do is fly with a hard drive, shove it in, no caddy or anything. And item two, USB 3 that's not only fast, but it has the standard called UASP that removes a lot of the protocol overhead of SCSI. What does it mean? Veeam or other backups go way faster, 20, 40, 60% faster. So I'm in a hotel room and something bad might happen when I'm far from home on my 1 terabyte drive or my 1 terabyte spinny drive. I have a plan B in my hands. And this was well under 100. I'm trying to remember.
Who makes that?
Here we go, StarTech. So let me throw the link in the show notes, Jim. But yeah, that's my latest gadget. And if I look here, you're not going to read that, but I'll read you the part number. USB 3.0, eSATA Trayless 3.5, HDD enclosure with UASP. There's a catchy name for you. But yeah, UASP is a recent acronym in the last year or so. If you buy USB 3.0 devices, highly recommend it. Everything's just way quicker. Backups, restores, using it. It lets USB 3.0 shine.
Okay, so you kind of get the full resources out of USB 3.
Exactly.
Oh, cool. All right, we'll include that in the show notes. Paul, I know you need to go, and we've kept you long enough. Thanks for coming out. Mike and I will wrap things up here, but thanks for coming out. Great to see you. We'll be excited to get you, and I'm sure your family will be excited to have you back in Connecticut. But good having you on. Thanks for coming out.
Oh, thank you, and Mike will be excited to get a word in edgewise. Thank you, guys. It was so much fun. I'm going to go eat at, what am I going to do? In-N-Out Burger, right?
All right.
Because they don't have those at home. Good night, guys.
Great meeting you.
Good night.
You too.
Thanks. I'm always super impressed by that guy.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's if
I could
if
probably
you're
talk to
new,
him for like hours if I want to do like one-on-one and not feel stupid, have the live audience watching.
yeah, and he would.
It's fantastic.
Well, listen. He's been always the nicest guy to me, and I've known Paul 5 years now, 4 or 5 years, ever since we kind of put this community together. And he is one of the smartest guys I know, and one of the nicest guys I know, and one of the most thorough guys that I know. He just doesn't miss anything. If he's doing it, it's exactly right. And if he
Yeah,
can't
every
figure it out,
question you have for him, I mean, he's got a thorough answer that he's gone into, he's dove into, he's got his things together. It's great.
yeah, no, and his site is dynamite. So tinkertry.com, it gets great traffic. His documentation is super thorough. I have never gone there and not been able to find what I need when I'm looking for it from him. What I like about him too is he updates his blog post. So he'll put some stuff out there and then he'll find some more stuff and he'll update the post and he'll update the post. He's
It's
just
already bookmarked in my bookmark bar, so this is it's already gonna be my number one go-to because I
Yeah.
do want to fire some of this stuff up and work on it. I feel like it really diversifies your knowledge when you can start doing these sort of projects.
Yeah, and start with you have 60-day trial versions that you can try out, get some things rolling, and then, like he mentioned, I don't know if you were here or not, like he mentioned, $200 to get kind of on their professional program if you want to use that software and get more than 60 days. That's way cheaper than MSDN for Microsoft.
Oh, yeah.
Way cheaper.
Yeah.
So now you still have to licensing from a standpoint. Say you were going to use VMware and you were going to run Windows VMs. You still have to license those people. So don't think that because you're running VMware, you can just run unlicensed copies of everything. If it has a license, you need to buy a license for it. Unless you have an MSDN subscription or something like that, and you're putting it in a test mode. That's a perfect environment. If you have a MSDN at work, see if they'll and you want to try VMware, see if they'll drop another $200 for you and try it.
Yeah. Do we have time for a quick update I was going to give people?
Yes, go.
Okay. Let me grab it here. So Cox, we started talking about cutting the cable, and so we were talking about our cable companies and what they're doing. So here in Omaha, we have Cox as one of our big providers, and you guys might too in your area. But one of the big announcements they just made, I actually found out by logging into my Cox account, and some of you guys might know this, but it was new to me, is that they are going all digital. So come September, all their signal is going to be digital. So what that means is anytime that you have your TV plugged directly into your wall, that is no longer going to work. And so for me, all of my TVs are plugged in directly into my wall. I don't pay for any of the boxes. I don't have high definition. But what they're doing is they are giving out these free mini boxes. So if you just go online and you say you sign up for the all digital, they are giving out free mini boxes. So they come in a box like this. I ordered 3 of them. Your first 2 are free, and your third one is going to be $2 a month. But the nice thing about it is now I have free high definition. I have a channel guide now on Unbox on all my televisions, and it's all for free. So it was a nice little hidden update I didn't expect to see from Cox, but just one of those things that I like to see the cable companies going on all digital. It makes sense, and the fact that they're giving these away for free was even better. So they're making the transition decent for people who are making the switch. So it's kind of a fun little update.
Well, I didn't know you could get a free. I use over the air, but I didn't know you could get a free kind of mini cable box from that would.
Yeah.
That would help.
No DVR capabilities, but still high definition. All of a sudden I plugged them in and plugged into my TV. I'm like, wow, huge difference from just having your TV plugged into the wall. So it was great, and having a channel guide, love that too. So
yeah, that is kind of helpful to have that.
Yeah, and for free. Can't beat it.
Yeah. No, we have here at the Collison House. If you're new to the show, we do HTPC, which is Windows 7 running Media Center. You get a nice media guide. Somehow Microsoft still allows that to be updated. I do not know how, but you get that integrates in. You get a great media guide on Windows Media Center. So that's one of those things. If you got an old Windows 7 box that's still running Media Center, you can plug that. I basically bought HD home runs that are on the network that then act as I plug them into the antenna. And actually, if you're not a part of our Facebook group, and I'll have a post coming out on this too, bought a new antenna this weekend, and man, totally changed. I mean, like we could not get Fox, the Fox, here in Omaha, ABC, NBC, CBS go one direction. Fox is in a whole other set of antennas, completely different area, and so I was struggling to get, and of course my wife Sarah watches American Idol, and it was skipping, and why she hasn't murdered me at night when I'm sleeping, I do not know. Right? She should have shanked me a long time ago, right? that she just puts up with it. And so I was sitting here the other day, and I'm like, I'm just gonna buy, I'm gonna fix this. And I don't know what made me think of it, but I was on Twitter. Let me go to my Amazon list here. I posted this in the Facebook group. By the way, if you haven't joined us on our Facebook group, and I know a lot of you don't like Facebook, and that's okay. You don't have to join us over there. But if you haven't joined us on our Facebook group, just search The Average Guy. I'll give you the exact address here in just a second. If we head out there, the group's pretty active, a couple hundred guys out there. If you go to facebook.com/group/theaverageguy, it's easy. Just ask to be let in. I'll let you in. It's a closed group, so you don't get spammers. But so, and I posted out there. This is a Leaf Ultimate Amplified Indoor HD TV antenna. The link, we'll put the link in the show notes, or join the Facebook group. It's a Mohu, I think is how they pronounce it. MOHU Leaf 50, which means it's supposed to have a 50-mile radius on that. And so I bought that refurbed, $39, $39.99. I say $40 refurb, saved me about $50. Through that thing, I already had, I had put old school antennas up in my attic, and that's what I was using. They're ginormous, right? They're terrible. So this is only about this big. Right?
Okay, it looked that big. I was wondering if it really was that tiny.
It's that big. It's not very big, and I'm like, oh, I just got totally ripped off. I got totally taken.
When the box shows up, you're just thinking like, oh man.
I got totally taken. That's kind of what I thought. So I first installed it down here. It comes with a little amplifier. The amplifier is only that big, right? And you plug it in. It's got a USB plug-in, so you can plug it into USB power. I don't have any outlets upstairs. It's a good thing it plugged in down here in the basement. And then I've run all the way up. I've run a cable all the way up to the attic. So I just disconnected the big honkin' ones, and I just plugged this in and hung it off the rafter. Everything comes in perfect. I could just Fox, perfect. ABC, perfect. NBC, perfect. I even got the PBS channels even got better, and they're over across the river in Iowa.
So you're a home hero now. Your wife loving you.
Well, so I fixed it the night she left the next day. She's out in Kentucky right now with her sister.
Oh, okay.
So she hasn't gotten to fully try, but everything's recording. So I'm kind of hoping when she gets back, all the recording stuff is good for her, and then then I'll be the hero. I hope. So I haven't had a lot of time this week to even watch TV, so I haven't done it. But I ran it for a couple hours that night. Watched, kept turning channels to see what it'd be like. So if you're in a place where you want to try over their HD, this Mohu, I think maybe, Mohu Leaf 50, it's an indoor antenna. It's designed to be inside. Might be worth a try. $40, a recondition. Mike, it doesn't look like $40 worth of material. I'm just gonna say, they're making the profit margin's got to be huge on these things, and of course they have. Or
even $90 for the full price.
I know. Don't buy the full price ones. Do not buy the they got reconditioned ones on Amazon, and that would be my recommendation. On the box, it's like, built based on military technology. So it just had all the makings of that as seen on TV, right?
Right.
And you're like, oh, this thing's gonna break, or this is not gonna work. It actually worked really well. So I put that in the Facebook group. I don't know if everybody's had a great experience with it. It just depends how far you are from places. Lots of factors. I always figured I could send it back if it didn't work, but it worked great for me. So it was kind of cool.
Very nice. Yeah, I was excited with the free box because now I have the ability to plug it into my Xbox One, which, we had talked about the adapter earlier, but now no need for it. Got the free box, going to plug it on in and watch some live hockey while I play virtual hockey. It's going to be pretty fantastic.
No, I'll have to come by. I'll have to come by and check that out.
Yeah.
No, we'll have to have a Home Gadget Geeks meet up at your place, just you and me, and play some Xbox and watch some hockey.
I'd love it. The other day we had a college flashback. We moved the sofa into the office, brought over a college buddy, flipped my two monitors, and he brought his Xbox, and we just sat there for hours. It was fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
A good time.
Well, let's stay around for a little bit of a post show as I bring this in for landing. Don't forget we have the Home Service Show, Surface Geeks, AverageGuy.tv meetup coming up. That's a long title. Coming up here September 11th and 12th. We'll have some links to that coming up. We'd love to have you come out to Indianapolis. I think Mike's still committed to coming with me, so we're going to caravan out there if we can get him away from studies.
I am.
And make our way there, and so it'll be fun to do. It's a great weekend, man. It'll be great to have you. I've always done this alone, so it'll be great to have somebody to talk to. You'll probably be shanking me by the time we get there, but
Me and my backpack home server, I'm coming along.
oh, that's right.
Yeah.
The backpack home server. I
Yeah,
love it.
it's happening.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Just a cord.
Yep.
Out the
Big
back.
long cord hanging out.
Power.
Out.
No, you could get a little Wi-Fi. It would be Wi-Fi only, and then it would, when you're out of Wi-Fi range, it would just, maybe do store forward or back up or something.
Well, there we go. And then the motion powered, so as I'm walking, you just have to keep walking in circles. Can't stop and talk to anyone. Just, hey, walk with me. Let's talk.
No, my server's backing up right now. My server's
Yeah.
backing up. That'll be awesome, and we may even get Andy to come. I'm trying to get Andy to join us. That'd be quite the
It'll be a
convoy
blast.
out there. We'd have a good time. And so that's coming up as well. Don't forget, and thanks for using the AverageGuy.tv Tech Scholarship Fund. You guys continue to do that. So the AverageGuy.tv/Amazon or the AverageGuy.tv/AmazonCA in Canada. Don't forget those proceeds go to Zadler. I need to get Zadler scheduled back on here, and so we will do that here shortly. Both of those do that. I'll be writing a newsletter this weekend, and so I think it's this weekend. It's this weekend. Get it ready. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, you might want to do that. Head out to the AverageGuy.tv/newsletter, and that you can get signed up for that. We update that once a month. Although I might wait till the next weekend, so you got a week to do it. By the time you're listening to this, that's okay. I'm going to be in D.C. this week, and so I'm going out to see the Christian and Ashton again, and Colin, our interns out there. And so you can. So I'll be traveling a little bit. We may do some. Oh, you know what? Hey, we've put a special Cyber Frontiers together. If you haven't checked out Cyber Frontiers yet, you might want to wait. On Monday, this coming Monday, we'll be live Cyber Frontiers. Kevin Schoonover is going to come on Cyber Frontiers and bring some enterprise big data cybersecurity to the program with Christian. So this will be fun to have those two together. And I'm not going to get a word edgewise. I'm just saying.
It's all right. So just let them go for it. Just let them talk and listen and learn from the.
Let them run. Let them run. I think that's 20 or 21 on Cyber Frontiers. If you're listening, you haven't heard that yet, man, that's a dynamite podcast that some super smart college kids that we have on there, and they just run circles around me. But it is always great to have them on as well. So lots of things going on here on the network. If you haven't listened to Open Mic Night, you want to head over to omnpodcast.com. That stands for Open Mic Nights, Apple-based podcast. And so Mike does that on Tuesday nights. You can listen to it live, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and a great podcast. I caught you for a little while this week, Mike, on Tuesday. I tried to jump in there a little bit.
Yeah, we had a few guys from this audience, so it was nice to have everyone out there. So
I know Opta's made his way over. He's
has.
got a regular, and you can join it. You can join Mike over there. He uses an IRC chat room, and so if you're just longing for the days of AOL and list servers, you can get over there and use IRC chat and just remember what it used to be like. And so that'll be good. That's coming up this Monday. If you ever, and I haven't scheduled that yet, but I will on the site. And so we have a little calendar app over there if you don't know what's going on. That's coming up this Monday. That is April 27th, I believe. And, of course, if you're listening to this after that Monday, sorry, you got to come listen live on Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. We have got some great shows coming up for you in the next couple weeks. So you want to stick around. You want to join us live. Paul was tonight. John Greenaway is going to talk about home automation, and this guy is actually doing some script stuff with home automation. So this is going to be really, really cool to have John on here as we talk about that as well. And then this has never happened before. Never, ever. Mike, this won't be significant to you, but for the guys in the chat room, Dave McCabe is going to join me on Home Gadget Geeks. Dave has 211 shows. Dave's never made it on Home Gadget Geeks, and he's coming. So if you want to see worlds collide, don't cross the streams, Ray. We're going to put Dave McCabe on Home Gadget Geeks, and we're going to talk about the Echo. So both Dave got that and I got that. And so I think, no, you're out the next week. Rich Hay is coming in from Windows Observer and from, oh, shoot, I should know this. Windows Supersite. Rich's going to come in. He'll just be off of 2 major Microsoft conferences, and so we're going to cover all things Microsoft. We're giving Mike the night off, and so he doesn't want to hear all that Microsoft crap anyways, right?
No, that's what I need to pay attention to.
Well, you can listen.
We'll
record it.
So.
We'll record it for you. How's that sound?
Oh, is this available after the fact? That sounds
It
great.
is available after the fact.
Okay.
Both audio and video, download available, RSS, iTunes, Android, all that good stuff.
I bet that's at theaverageguy.tv, huh?
It is.
All right.
Nicely done. Yeah, all that. So we make all that available at theaverageguy.tv. Speaking of that, we've got the guys at Clamor coming on May 28th. So I've been talking about Clamor as a brand new service for listening to podcasts. And if you haven't checked them out yet, CLAMMR, you get little 18-second clips. We load here at theaverageguy.tv. All our podcasts we're loading into Clamor. Have you made the Clamor jump?
Yeah, I just did. So haven't even got them up there yet, but started playing with it. Love it. Very interesting.
Good. We're going to have them on the podcast. They're going to come out. Listen, you don't want to miss the live shows. 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern out at theaverageguy.tv/live. Stay around for the post show. With that, we'll say good night, everybody.